talk about the 3 E's and then kind of explain them. So the 3 E's before your season starts here is to focus on event planning, expectation management, and then eating practices. So those are the 3 things that I think right now, before anybody's Christmas holiday season has officially started, what we want to take some time to actually focus on first and foremost. So step number 1 is our event planning. So with event planning, what I think is very helpful is to just kind of do a bit of an audit here. What do you have planned out for yourself? What do you expect to be planned out for you over the month of December? How many social gatherings are you expecting? And how many do you want to participate in? How many of them are important to you? And how many of them are you okay kind of being a bench warmer where you don't really need to focus on, going all in with that event? So I think, just taking a step back and asking yourself like, oh, you know what, I have my Christmas party, my husband's Christmas party, then we do Christmas Eve dinner at my parents, and then Christmas dinner at his parents, and then we have a big Boxing Day thing. So I have over 5 things that I can expect for the month of December. Some people, they don't have anything, and that's okay too. Some people, maybe they have 1 or 2 things where it doesn't feel as overwhelming. So I think, that's step number 1 is just, instead of like being so deep inside of it, like just take a step back and just see like, okay, what do I have going on over the month of December? And I think that can be a really helpful starting point. And then, like I said, ask yourself, how many of these events really mean something to you, where making memories is, more important for you? Maybe this is your first Christmas with your grandma that you haven't seen in 3 years. So obviously, you spending time with your grandmother, who, like my grandma's 91 years old, like I would rather, obviously I'm not going to see her because she's in Prince George, but just giving an example here, I would rather, if I was going to PG, be present and enjoy my time with her and focus on that versus, me stressing about, does this hit my macros perfectly? Is it within my program? And having to explain myself to her why I'm not eating my Italian grandmother's desserts, That's something that's important to me. Whereas, if I were to go to, like, say, my husband's Christmas party, I don't really know these people. I don't really care what they think. I don't really need to focus on being all in and, just in engaging and being present with making memories with that. I'm still going to enjoy myself, but I'm okay with, being a bit of a bench warmer and staying relatively on track. So I think, step number 1, like I said, name the number of events that you have and then differentiate between which events are really important to you that you would rather focus on making memories over progress, and which events you don't really, they're just things that you have to kind of do, or things that you kind of want to do. You're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, where making progress is more important to you than making memories in those situations. So that's a good starting point when it comes to step number 1, which is event planning. Step number 2 is expectation management. So with your expectation management, I think that this really needs to be applied for those events where making memories outweighs making progress. Like I said, going back to my example, if I was going to Prince George, being present with my family and spending time with my 91-year-old grandmother, making those memories is more important to me than making progress. But I need to take a step back and, just kind of manage my expectations here and remind myself there's going to be a trade-off, right? If I am going to, make the decision like, hey, you know what, I might have an extra dessert item here and there. I might have an extra glass of wine with dinner than what I typically have. I need to remember that there's going to be a trade-off with that. And with that trade-off, it may be, some water retention, it may be some inflammation from the different foods that my body is consuming, and it may actually be fat regain. And just because we hear those words, fat regain, a lot of people freak out. It's okay if we regain a little bit of fat. How much of it is it really going to be due to fat regain? Maybe a little bit of it. There's never really typically one culprit, right? So when you hear fat regain, don't let that freak you out, especially if it's for those events that deep down in your soul that it's better for you to focus on making those memories over progress with. So we have to just take a step back and remind ourselves that, hey, you know what? There's a trade-off here, and you have to be okay with that trade-off. So managing our expectations when it comes to that is really important. And hey, you know what? You might not actually see the scale go up at all, and that's okay too. That's actually a bonus, right? But we might need to remind ourselves that, hey, we might not actually see progress during this month in regards to fat loss, and we need to be okay with that. So if we find that we have a lot of events where, making those memories is more important to us than making progress, it might be the time now to consider maybe implementing an off season for yourself. We have our aesthetic season, our maintenance season, and our longevity season. With the aesthetic season, that primarily focuses on fat loss, body composition, just those very strict, rigid changes that we're looking for. Is it realistic for people to see those types of results during the month of December if we have, say, 5+ events during the month of December? I'm going to say probably not, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you are a failure. We have to be realistic with ourselves. We have to be realistic with our lifestyle and, what is, going to happen during the month of December. So if we want to participate in some of these events, we might need to have that conversation with ourselves. We just have to always remind ourselves that, hey, there's going to be a trade-off here if I make the decision to enter into my off season. But it doesn't have to be to the point where we completely lose all of our progress. So we still need to maintain that level of discipline and still focus on making sure that we take those maintenance seasons, that off season, just as seriously. The final E, so remember the three E's here: event planning, expectation management, and the last one is eating practices. So with eating practices, I think that this primarily revolves around us just prepping our mindset. That's basically what we're doing for this entire process of before the season actually starts. But we want to be a little bit more specific and focus in regards to our eating practices. So implementing mindful eating practices. This is the time to really fixate our skill sets and master our skill sets on implementing mindful eating, right? So that's where we focus on eating slowly, paying attention to the textures, the aromas, the tastes of the foods that we are consuming, chewing slowly, not gorging when we are eating, putting our fork or our spoon down in between each bite. So things like that, where we really want to take the time to ensure that we feel equipped to focus on implementing these mindful eating practices. But as well too, I think it's also about prepping our mindset that, hey, perfection doesn't exist. Even if we take a step back and we decide what we want to do in regards to implementing an off season or not, we have to remember that things aren't going to be perfect. So we really want to make sure that we don't allow that perfection mentality to take over, because when it does, and we have all been there, myself included, when that perfection mentality takes over, what tends to happen? We tend to say, screw it. We tend to let that all or nothing mentality take over, where we say, you know what, I planned out to have only one piece of pie, but what's the difference? I don't care anymore. I'm going to go have 4 pieces of pie. I don't care if I gain any weight. I'm just going to focus on my weight loss in the new year. And it's when we have that type of mentality where we take 1 step forward and 3 steps back. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to focus more so on taking those 3 steps forward and only 1 step back by entering into an off season where we're not completely being derailed. So really taking the time to focus on our eating practices and, the eating strategies that we want to implement for ourselves during the holiday season can really go a long way.